wants is that that light may arise within you, that the day star. What's this day star? Who is the day star? Revelation 22 verse 16, Jesus said, I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. So what he's talking about is that Jesus Christ might rise in your heart. That not only will the gospel go out in the world in general, not only will the darkness and the ignorance and the sin of the Gentile nations be enlightened. It talks about, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. The Lord Jesus and the gospel message that he brought and the new covenant. Not only will it go out in general in the whole world, but that it might come into your heart too. That Jesus Christ might be a light that starts to grow within you. That you also might perceive the truth, not in any general sense, but in a very specific sense. That you might be born again by the Spirit of God, that the light of the truth of God might dawn, as it were, on you, might dawn in your darkness and dispel the darkness that's in your heart. When I became a Christian, nobody approached me with any cunningly devised fables. I walked into a church in the evening, sat down in an old-fashioned pew, and I didn't know what to expect. I knew nothing about Christianity. I mean, literally, very, very little. I'd heard of the Old and the New Testament, but I didn't really know what they were. I'd heard of the Trinity, but I didn't know what that meant, really. I didn't know any Christian songs. I was in ignorance, really. And I didn't like Christians, to be honest with you. I always went out of my way to be as unpleasant as possible to them. Why? Because I thought they were idiots. And yet God opened my eyes, and do you know what? I saw that I was the idiot. I was the one who was living in misery and emptiness and darkness. I was the one whose life meant nothing. I had denied myself nothing that I could get for pleasure, for myself, for my own selfish reasons. I had done whatever I could to get pleasure for myself in my life. And yet there was no man more unhappy than me. There was nobody who felt as empty and as worthless as me. And yet God opened my eyes to the truth. The darkness in me was dispelled by the light of God's truth. And the day star arose in my heart, Jesus Christ. I didn't know, I'd not heard about being born again. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what you were supposed to do. All I knew was that I had sins. I knew I was a sinner, and I knew that I needed to be forgiven by God. I knew that much. And that was it. I just came to God and said, Lord, forgive me. Forgive me for the things that I've done. Make me clean. I knew that I was unclean in my heart. I knew that I wasn't right. And I wanted to be right before God. And I wanted God. I wanted him to be my Father. I wanted to be his child. I wanted him to take who I was and change me. Wasn't happy with who I was. And I knew that only one person could change me, and that was God. So that's how I came to God, was in darkness, in ignorance, in sin. And yet by God's grace, he saved me. By God's grace, he did change me. And it makes me sad, when so many people who hear the gospel reject it and say, well, yeah, it's just made up, really. And there's a young person and his girlfriend who I've spoken to before, I challenged before out on the street when I was preaching the gospel. And from time to time, I see them, And he saw me the other day, and he just stood and laughed and pointed, but it was a hollow laughter, it was just, I'll do this. It was a hollow laughter, and I just felt pity for the guy, I just thought, well, it's such a shame that you have to be dishonest, you have to just mock and scorn because you can't be honest. You can't be honest about yourself and say, look, yeah, I am a sinner. I am wrong. I'm not happy inside. You have to pretend that all is well. You have to pretend that you don't need God in this world. And yet I believe each person deep down inside, in their heart of hearts, they know that there is a God. They know that they need God. And yet they will not accept Him.